Alexander the Great didn't die. The timeline that changes everything. What happens next?
An empire that might never fall. A westward turn toward Rome. And a world rewritten.
Okay, let's go.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Morgan.
And I'm Laura Reed.
Welcome to our channel.
This episode was recorded at Best Minute Studio.
Thank you for watching. Let's begin. Here's something wild to consider. What if one of history's most pivotal moments wasn't a battle or revolution, but rather a fever that killed Alexander the Great at age 32? That single death completely reshaped the ancient world.
That's such a fascinating way to look at it. It's like history's biggest what-if scenario, with consequences that rippled across continents.
You know what really gets me thinking? Alexander conquered territory from Greece to India in just 12 years, but never had to face the real challenge of governing at all. It's like building the world's largest startup, but never dealing with day-to-day operations.
And those skills are so different, right? The qualities that make someone a brilliant conqueror might actually work against them as an administrator.
Exactly. And here's what historians find really interesting. If he had lived longer, Alexander would have faced this fundamental choice between expansion and consolidation. His empire already stretched across 2 million square miles. That's about the size of the continental United States.
Well, that brings up a crucial point. How do you even manage an empire that size with ancient technology? I mean, just getting a message from one end to the other could take months.
That's precisely the challenge. And it gets even more complicated when you look at the cultural aspects. Alexander had this vision of fusing Greek and Persian cultures, but we're talking about dozens of different peoples, languages, and traditions.
And wasn't there already tension around that? I remember reading that some of his Macedonian officers were pretty unhappy about him adopting Persian customs.
Oh, absolutely. That highlights one of the biggest challenges he would have faced. His army had already shown its breaking point at the Hyphasis River in India, where they basically said, enough is enough, and refused to go further. Even Alexander couldn't force them to march on.
That really shows the limits of personal charisma, doesn't it? Even the most powerful ruler still depends on others buying into their vision.
And here's what's really fascinating about the succession issue. If Alexander had lived longer, he would have needed to transform his personal authority into something more institutional. Historical records show that when he died, his empire was divided among his generals in what historians call the Wars of the Diadochi.
So what do you think would have happened if he'd had time to establish a proper succession plan?
Well, looking at similar historical examples, he might have tried to create a hybrid system, keeping the Persian administrative structure but incorporating Macedonian and Greek elements. But here's the thing. That kind of institutional building takes decades, not years.
That makes me think about how his early death might have actually preserved his legacy in a way. He never had to deal with the messy reality of turning conquest into governance.
You know what's really interesting? Some historians argue that Alexander's death actually led to more cultural exchange than if he'd lived. The breakup of his empire created multiple centers of Hellenistic culture, each developing in its own unique way.
That's such a counterintuitive outcome. The failure of unity actually created more diversity and innovation.
And when you look at the numbers, it's striking. In the century after Alexander's death, we see the founding of dozens of new cities, the creation of massive libraries like the one in Alexandria, and an explosion of philosophical schools.
Well, that really challenges our assumptions about success and failure in history, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Sometimes what looks like a historical tragedy can open up new possibilities. Alexander's death at 32 meant his empire fragmented, but that fragmentation created space for new ideas and innovations to flourish.
That's such a powerful insight about how change happens in history, not always through grand plans, but through unexpected turns and adaptations.
And in many ways, these questions about power, governance, and cultural integration are just as relevant today. How do you balance central control with local autonomy? How do you create systems that can outlast their founders? These are questions every organization and society still grapples with.
That really brings it full circle, showing how this ancient story still has so much to teach us about leadership and power today.
And perhaps that's why Alexander's story remains so compelling. It's not just about what happened, but about these eternal questions of human ambition and its limits. His early death leaves us forever wondering, what if? And that's where we leave this alternate world, at the edge of a new century. I'm Brian.
I'm Laura. Thanks for spending these minutes with us.
History is written by outcomes.
But imagination helps us see the roads not taken. See you next time.